Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, the place where we not only talk about what's going on in the gun world, but also how we're going to fix it together. And the content tonight is an absolute treat. We have the Brandon Herrera sitting down with me on an interview to talk about and break down the border crisis. What are the implications? What are the ins and outs? And what are we going to do about it? And more importantly, what's he going to do about it? Because you guys know he's doing a thing right now, and I cannot wait to walk through this entire interview with you guys. Now, of course, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. We are distributing freedom 2 and 3 times daily, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. And this interview with Brandon is brought to you by Arrowhead Tactical. Now, we are talking about a company that has mastered EDC and comfortable athletic wear. We are talking about something where you can have the gun of your choice, the holster of your choice, while still remaining comfortable and potentially out for a run or a jog or whatever athletic activity you're down for. For example, look at this innovation we're talking about here. They have included a concealed inner belt in the apparel, which leads to an extremely secure and reliable holster retention and effective drawing and reholstering. Not only can you carry a gun in your athletic gear, you can also carry your own handguns, especially larger handguns, and different holsters and positions. There's lots of styles to choose from. There's something for everybody, but more importantly, you can be comfortable or you can be active and still live the EDC life that you're accustomed to. Everything will be linked in the description box below, and thank you to them for sponsoring this interview with Brandon. And without much more ado, let's get right to that. All right, so as I mentioned in the introduction, we have an incredible opportunity. One of my closest friends, at least from my perspective, in the gun world, a legend. He needs no introduction. You guys all know him. His name's Brandon Herrera, obviously from the channel Brandon Herrera, but also he's making a difference in doing something that's out of the box, and it takes courage. I'm incredibly proud of him for that. He is running for Congress himself. But with that, Brandon, thank you, first of all, man, just getting on here. This is incredible. It's an honor, and I'm just amped to have the conversation with you, man.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, brother. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk more during SHOT, man, but we've got this lovely opportunity that's presented itself to us, and I think we can do a little bit of a deep dive on it.
Oh, yeah, man. I am so amped. And so, as I mentioned in the introduction, guys, we're going to dive into the crisis, the border, the issue that's happening inside of Texas right now, because the ramifications, guys, are across the spectrum on this one. Just to kind of start this thing off and dive right into it, Brandon, you're running for Congress actually in Texas itself. You've got very close roots to the issue. You are very familiar with it, much more than I would be way over here in Florida. But before we even dive into all the details that the Democrats are doing, all the dancing and all the back and forth they're doing, kind of walk us through from your perspective on the ground. Like, what is the actual impact and what's really going on there? And what are the ramifications, do you think?
So it's huge. So the district I'm running in is Texas Congressional District 23. And so we've got the district has the most border frontage with Mexico of any other district in the entire country. And so, like, it's ground zero for a lot of stuff, like the Del Rio area, Eagle Pass, a lot of the places that you see on the news with giant migrant crossings, and the issue going on right now between, Texas v. the U.S. government is all in my district, which is kind of wild to see transpire and just to be a part of. But the issue is a multifaceted issue for sure, because you've got obviously the illegal immigration thing, where you've got, I think it was about 2 million in 2023, just flooding across the very purposefully open border, presents itself in a lot of ways. It's an economic issue. It's a national security issue. It's a personal security issue. Like there's a lot of different elements to it. It's not just like, it's not a racial thing as much as it is just, it's completely open security, just clusterfuck, to be honest. I don't know if that's an official, I don't know how official I have to be here, but it's a nightmare. And if you talk to some of the people on the ground, like you talk to some of the Border Patrol guys, the National Guard guys, they're not being allowed to do their job. Like, it's a very intentional manufactured crisis.
Right. And I think the way that you put that was so good. It's not about a specific individual issue. Like, this is a pretty broad, impactful issue, not only in Texas, but in our country. I mean, this has significant ramifications. But, one of the things that I think is so fascinating about this, and you and I talked offline about this briefly, for decades, I mean, you and I are a similar age, pretty much for our entire adult lives, it's been ignore the border, that's not a thing. And then it became sanctuary cities because that was the compassionate thing to do, right? You've got California, you've got Chicago, New York, like all of these cities that are left bastions. They basically said, you guys are mean. We're going to virtue signal and we're going to do sanctuary cities or sanctuary states because we're the compassionate ones. Well, it kind of changes once you get like 30,000 people. And then, Eric Adams up in New York is like
Yep.
at 28% approval rating. Um,
That was my favorite part about
it's,
that whole fiasco is that like anybody can be a sanctuary city away from the issue, but when and
mhm,
it was controversial because when Abbott and DeSantis were bussing people up there, people were like, "Well, this is rude. You're playing
right.
you're playing politics with using people as pawns." But it brought the issue to their front door for the first time
Mhm.
ever because it's easy to be a sanctuary city 2,500 miles away from the problem.
Yes.
But when you bring the problem to their door, all of a sudden they're like, "We don't have the financial resources to be able to handle this." It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah, no, that's an exactly perfect way to say it. You've got someone who is virtue signaling, casting doubt and all of their superiority from a distance, but the second they even get a taste of it, all of a sudden it's, oh my gosh, what are we doing? How are we going to do this? We got to shut down schools, hotels. This is insane. Federal government, we need money, and the hypocrisy. I mean, it is delicious to say the least.
Yeah.
But the thing that's so fascinating about this entire thing and the timing and the way that all this lines up, and I'm sure you're aware in the middle of your campaign, immigration is one of the top three, depending on which polls you're looking at. It's either inflation or immigration. It's one of those two. And Biden's weakest political asset is immigration. I mean,
Yes.
horrible ratings on it, right? And so when you look at all the pressure that's being applied, I mean, the move from Abbott and DeSantis that you just mentioned was genius. Put pressure on the people who are enabling this, and all of a sudden that polling starts to change and they start to actually feel the problem. And now Biden is feeling the problem. We're going to get to him in a second. But I think it's so genius to do. I mean, what are your takes on how do you think this is going to play out? What do you think is going to happen in regards to Biden on this one?
So it's no secret that immigration is now becoming a major issue in the 2024 election. It's becoming the
Mm-hmm.
issue, and it's been really great to see people like Elon Musk and a lot of other more like mainstream, not apolitical figures, but people that aren't just mostly politics. They're not politicians. They're just kind of involved in that universe, taking hard
Mm-hmm.
stances on immigration, like him visiting the border and saying like, "Hey, this is a real problem." Unfortunately, he did it with my opponent, who has not been aiding the problem at all. He's been really good at photo ops and going on Fox
Yeah.
News talking about this is an issue, but he's we can get into that later if you'd like. But he's been
Oh
very
yeah.
weak
Oh
on
no.
the issue as well.
We're getting into that later. Absolutely. But
it's been nice to see that they're being forced into actually taking action now. Although the actions that they're taking, I'm not. It's kind of a Band-Aid fix for their public appearance, but it's not going to solve anything. In fact, it's probably just going to legally solidify certain issues. I don't know if you've read the new bill that they proposed.
not all the way through. I've just seen the highlights at this point. You're talking about the Senate bill, right?
Yes, the Senate bill.
Yep.
I think they said it was what was it? It was 5,000. It allows them to shut down the border, like shut down all immigration, everything, if they get to the point of crisis, which I believe is 5,000 people a day.
That's the point.
Hold on, it's like you do the math on that. It's like that's 1.8 million illegals per year. Anything
Right.
below that's not a problem. It's like,
Not a problem.
Are you serious?
Right. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the entire legislation on it because, I mean, I'm sure we'll do a lot of coverage on it as well. But to your point, like, is that what you deem a crisis? 5,000 a day.
Right.
What about 4,000? Is 8,000? Like who picks these random numbers that have no impact whatsoever?
Not only random, it's like it's not a random number. It's like that number would have been the worst illegal immigration crisis. If like 3 years ago, that would have been the worst one in American history.
Yeah.
It's like, are you so that's where we're deeming this now an issue?
Exactly. We've gone, talk about an Overton window, man. We've gone from like all the way to terrible to just moderately bad. And now it's like, well, we did what we could.
It's like if the same amount of being ripped apart in the media would happen, or if just imagine let me rephrase that. Imagine the media response if Republicans came to the table and say, we're not going to we're now going to, we're going to do something about mass shootings. So anything over 50 deaths will now be declared a national. It's like, whoa, hold on, back the fuck up. That's a major problem.
Right. Right.
You don't just get to change again the Overton window of where the issue is.
Oh, wait a minute. We don't get to pull an ATF and just redefine terms and then magically, executively, bureaucratically change law without Congress. Right. We don't get to do that.
Yeah, you don't just get to change definitions to see to meet your political goals. Like for example, changing the definition of what a vaccine is because yours didn't work.
Yeah, that's so weird. Pistol braces. It's odd. It's odd. But veering back into the immigration thing violently if we must. There's something else that I wanted to touch on. Kind of, we're doing this in a breadcrumb approach, right? So we talked about the sanctuary cities, which is
Mm.
obviously ironic. But something else that a lot of people in the media aren't talking about is the Second Amendment preservation area in Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the exact same principle that was applied to Second Amendment infringements from the federal government in the state of Missouri. And the DOJ sued that all the way to the SCOTUS, and the SCOTUS said, "Yeah, you can't do that."
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Which you kind of realize, like, even when that first came out, I kind of knew that was a more of a symbolic gesture than anything else, because you're not going to be able to prevent federal agents from enforcing federal law in their jurisdiction. That's that's a weird place, but I like where their spirit was, and I like the fact that they said that we're not going to put any state resources toward enforcing these laws. Based as hell, right?
Right.
But where that differs, I think, on the federal immigration thing is that it's not preventing federal agents from enforcing federal law. It's federal agents preventing state agents from enforcing the law.
Mm-hmm.
So the federal agents are preventing the enforcing of the law that they are supposed to enforce, but they're purposely being told to stand down.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to look at, to be quite honest, when you see these things side by side. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There are subtle nuances to it, but the spirit is the same, right?
Sure.
I'm going to enforce what I want to enforce, because that's the flavor of the week, because that's what we've deemed as the compassionate thing to do. But I mean, I'll be honest, man. Like, when you look at people like Manchin, like Tester, Manchin's on his way out because he's retiring. Tester in Montana is waffling like crazy because he's in the Senate reelection campaign. I mean, this is putting some serious pressure on some Democrats. It really is.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because now it's no longer polling well for them. And so when you have politicians who have no principle, which don't get me wrong, this crosses both sides of the aisle, but much more common, in my opinion, on the left, people that go with the flow of what's popular opinion because they're worried about their reelections, whatever. They don't have to worry about looking themselves in the mirror at night. Most of them wouldn't see a reflection. So when issues like this stop polling well is when you start seeing real action, which is nice. It's nice to see. I just don't want people to lose sight of what the actual goals are, which is preventing, mass illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to push their legislators into voting for bad bills that allow for stuff that's going to make it hard for actual solutions, just because it's like, okay, this is now the Senate border security bill. You hear the Senate is doing something about illegal immigration.
Correct.
But if you actually read the bill, they're not doing shit. And it's just legally codifying bad policy.
Right. And so I think that you just hit on something that's so powerful around these issues, right? Like, when you see these big hot button issues, like you said, this has the public attention. This has the public polling. The Democrats are doing horrible on it, which is why you see them actually at the table for it. And to be fair, to your point, Republicans do the same thing. When they're polling bad on something, they come to the table. That's kind of the way the system works.
Certain ones. The bad ones do.
Right. Right. That's correct. But you mentioned a word that I think is so crucial and important in this, and that was solution. Because a lot of the time, and you and I have talked about this offline at some of our SHOT Show conversations or, random conversations when we run into each other. It's one thing to be upset about an issue and complain about that issue, but it's a completely separate issue to say, I'm upset about this. What are we going to do about it? Like that's a very important distinction. And to your credit, and that's one of I've told you to your face, I'm very proud of you because you've actually taken the step to run for Congress. Like, you're in a position where you could do it, and you did it. And that is something that is inspirational. And going towards that election campaign of what you're going into right now, I mean, you have an opponent who, like you said earlier, this is Tony Gonzalez. He hasn't exactly been an amazing stalwart champion of, let's see, just the last top of my head, Second Amendment rights, Jim Jordan's speakership election, the border. Yep. I mean, that's just in the last 6 months, I think. But yeah, I mean, do you have anything to say, like, roughly around that concept? Like, why'd you do this? What brought you to it?
First off, I appreciate the kind words. You're going to make a homie cry in the club, but you're not lying. And realistically, those two thoughts that you kind of threw out at the last minute are very related as to just some of the things that Tony's really, really, shit the bed on that. As to why I ran, it's literally that. I
Hmm.
didn't have any ambition to be a politician. I still think politician is a slur in my mind. I don't
Right.
look highly on most politicians, and I
Hmm.
certainly didn't want to be involved in this world. But I just realized, this is the person who's representing me. This is my congressman, and he doesn't represent me. He voted to fund Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's, gun control. He voted for the gun control. He voted for red flag laws. He voted against, or he killed in committee essentially, uh, actual border policy with HB2. He fought against Chip Roy on actually
Hmm.
getting an immigration solution handled. He voted for a $400 million vaccine tracking database during COVID. Like, this guy's just a very bad Republican all the way around.
Right.
He's voted with the left so many times and voted against traditional conservatism, libertarianism. Just really, really not the guy that I would think represents Texas values. And you can only see that so much without realizing, hey, I feel like I'm in the position where I have reach, I have an audience, I have the ability to fundraise, and I have, I think, the voice. And I think we can really, really make an impact on this. If I think we can win it. I wouldn't be running if I didn't think we had a solid chance at winning. But at the very worst case, I want to give him the primary challenge of his life and make him realize that if you make these bad votes that go counter to actual conservative policy, to actual Texan values, you will be primaried. You
Hmm.
can lose your job.
And I think, I think that speaks to, something. It was very well said, and I think it speaks to something that we have alluded to a few times in this conversation is when they feel the pressure, when they feel uncomfortable, they actually do what they're supposed to do, or at least
Yes.
attempt to do what they're supposed to do. And if you were, and this is going to be one of those, this is an important question, but you hear it all the time. If you were in the same position in Connecticut, if you were in the same position in Georgia, whatever area you are, and you feel like that representative is not living up to the ideals, a lot of the temptation is to say someone needs to primary him or
Yeah.
her. Why not you? You know what I mean? That's an important, just a snap in your head. I mean, it's just crazy.
And not everybody's in a position to do it. Like, because like for me, like I know I've got, the YouTube element, like the lot of connected
Hmm.
friends, a lot of, history and politics and things. Because, while I didn't want to be a politician, I've always kind of been tangentially involved in politics.
Right.
Everything we do between you and I is all obviously inherently political.
Oh yes.
Uh, but you don't necessarily need that. But you need financial backing. There's a lot of things that are required, especially to go after a federal office like that. It's not
Yeah.
easy. Like, these are $1 million races we're talking about. This is
Hmm.
something it's it takes a lot of resources. But that doesn't mean that you can't make a difference on the state level, for example.
Exactly.
State level, a local level, your local sheriff election, your local, your county
Hmm.
commissioners. A lot of the local elections affect your life more so than federal stuff does. Federal just makes Fox News. So a lot of people can get involved and be, have a positive impact on their political environment more so than they realize, and for cheaper and for less time than they realize, I think.
I completely agree. I mean, all politics is local. There's a reason that phrase exists. It's because
Yep.
it's true, right? And it's easy to fall into the trap. And this is like, again, going back to something you talked about. It's easy to fall into the trap of being negative, and there's a place for that,
Yeah.
and being upset because it's your country and it's coming from a place of passion. But at a certain point, you go, if not me, then who? You know what I mean? And like
Yes.
that. That's a huge important part, whether it's starting a YouTube channel or it's running for Congress or it's running for school board. All of these things are so pivotal because you never know where you're going to end up. I mean, like you just said, you never planned on doing a congressional run. I mean,
No.
I never planned on having a YouTube channel that focuses on gun politics. And like that wasn't part of the plan, but you rise to the occasion, right? And
Yeah.
I think that's crucial
And
to say.
not everybody can do it. Maybe not everybody's like in a position to be able to do it, but you can still support the people who do. Because the one thing
Hmm.
I don't understand is the people who don't get involved. They're politically active, but they're not involved in primaries. And then
Right.
everybody complains about the two-party system, like, oh, the two-party system's broken. It's really not. You get to choose your representatives. You just
Right.
if you complain about the two-party system, but you don't vote in your primaries where you actually choose who that person that you get to vote for in November is, you're part of the problem.
Right.
Because the reason why these bad politicians get away with still being the incumbent on the ballot is because people don't pay attention to their votes and they don't vote them out in the primaries.
Yep. And I think that is a excellent conversation to have for everyone to hear. Now, we're going to end this on a fun one. This is
Oh
a
no.
fun one because I heard. Oh yes. Oh no. It's a surprise. It's a surprise. So I heard, Brandon, that that Biden up there he's been working on it. It's been near and dear to his heart. He cares a lot about the border. I've
Mm.
heard through press releases he's been working on it for at least since October. 2 months he's been really at it in the Senate, and the whole time they've really been trying to put forward some amazing. I can't even deliver the sarcasm without laughing. Some amazing border solutions. I mean, do you think people actually buy this? I mean, like, there's no way from Kamala Harris never going and failing to Biden trying to claim credit since October. There's no way
No.
people buy this.
Not at all, and it's becoming abundantly clear with the situation that's happening right now on the Texas border, with Abbott
Mm-hmm.
basically telling the federal government to fuck off in no uncertain terms, and
Yeah.
he keeps drawing new lines in the sands. You need to be out by 1:30 today, or I'll tell you to be out again tomorrow. And it's very interesting to see, and it's very interesting to see the amount of states that have rallied behind and supported and said that they will send troops.
Mm-hmm.
And the 20, I think, was it 25 or 26 Republican governors that sent a letter.
I think 25. I think 25.
I think so too. Sending a letter to Biden saying basically we stand with Texas, and it's been really neat to
Right.
see. And I of all the places where it's looking like Civil War Part 2, Electric Boogaloo is going to kick off. It's like, really, it's going to be my district of Texas. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, but
But
you never do though.
but it's really cool to see, and it's interesting because it's also on another, like, it's a states' rights issue, because
Mm-hmm.
you have the right of Texas to defend its borders and to protect itself when the federal government fails. And like for whatever you want to say about the first American Civil War, slavery was the catalyst, but it was the catalyst to a states' rights issue.
That's
And
correct.
it's interesting to see history repeating itself in that way. And I hope to God it doesn't.
Right.
But it's interesting to see those lines being drawn so sharply
Mm-hmm.
on that.
Well, I think, and I did a video on this when it first popped. When I got back from shot, I think the interesting part about this is I don't think we're looking at something that would be like a civil war, kind of a hot war,
No.
shots fired. I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think what we're legitimately seeing here is all the conditions are right for the Republican governors to grow a pair and take advantage
Yes.
of the situation. That's what I think's happening. You got an election coming in 2024. Biden's incredibly weak. Immigration's his weakest policy. This is a tremendous issue to force. And you've got New York, Illinois, California, all the leftist bastion states are suffering under their own decisions of sanctuary. So it's a perfect setup
Yeah.
for a political push. And I think that's what you're seeing.
This turning into like a hot shooting war, like I'd probably put that at like maybe a 1% chance. Just
Right.
like Oppenheimer, it's like, well, 0 would be nice. But
Yeah, it would.
1%'s a little too much for comfort. But no, I really agree with that completely. This is Greg Abbott, pardon the pun, taking a stand and showing that you can fight the federal government and win. Like, this
Mhm.
is something, and not only that, but other states will stand behind you because we're all thinking the same thing. Nobody's doing it.
Yep.
And
It's the
that's
first one that stands up.
beautiful. Like, that's the
Yeah.
really cool thing to see happen in real time.
Oh, absolutely. We're living through history, and we have been over the last several years. But I mean, I think that was a really excellent synopsis, and I appreciate you getting on to talk about that. But where can people find you? Where can they support you? Throw it out there, man. Let's get in there.
I appreciate it, man. Well, the YouTube channel is, Brandon Herrera. We do a lot of the gun stuff, a lot of the sillier stuff. But if you want to check out the congressional campaign, it's going very well. I've been very appreciative for the response from the gun community and from everywhere else. All the people in Texas District 23 too have been remarkably positive. I've appreciated that. You can check that out at BrandonHerreraForCongress.com. If we also have, rifle giveaways every now and again, just to help with the donations and such. And we also, if you'd like to volunteer, especially if you're here between El Paso and San Antonio, we'd love to have you helping out on the campaign. BrandonHerreraForCongress.com/volunteer. The more people we have out there, the better, and just helps us amplify the message. Because at the end of the day, we all think the same. We're all in the same boat, I think, as far as this goes. But if the normal everyday Joe doesn't hear it and doesn't get that door knock with that message, it doesn't matter.
Right. And speaking to what we spoke to earlier, kind of wrapping it, what can you do for it? Maybe you're not a YouTuber. Maybe you're not a Brandon Herrera. Maybe you're not Congress. Maybe you're not a congressional delegate, but you
Good
are
for you.
qualified to
You're
knock on
better
a
off
door.
for it.
You're better off for it. You don't want to go to SHOT Show. It's a dirty, dirty place.
I'm still haunted by the things I did for a Klondike bar, let alone SHOT Show Circle Bar.
Oh, the Circle Bar. But that is an episode for a different time. My man, I thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute honor, and the best of luck in your campaign. And you guys, please check him out.
I appreciate it, brother. It's always a pleasure.